The Pokemon Kyurem was recently banned from competitive singles following a suspect vote. The requisite 60% supermajority was reached and Pokemon was banned as a result, except it turns out that the vote was rigged the whole time. Kyurem was falsely banned based on illegitimate votes, and following this discovery, Kyurem is now unbanned from Gen 9 OU. We all owe Kyurem an apology for this misunderstanding. Everybody please say sorry in the comments down below. But how did this even happen? I mean, I have never seen such a thing before. Why would somebody do this, and what does it mean for the future of this community? Let's find out. Subscribe to the channel so that we can find the culprit of this unbelievable Poke scandal. I think I have a vague idea of who might have been responsible. Thank you. Many people are confused about why the competitive singles community bans Pokemon in the first place. And for those unfamiliar, it is a bit confusing. 6v6 singles is a popular way to play Pokemon because it obviously mirrors the way that in-game battles are played. Even though the official competitive format for Pokemon is doubles, a lot of people prefer 6v6 singles. Competitive communities for 6v6 singles have been around for a very long time as well, since back in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. And Smogon, the biggest competitive singles community, has existed since Gen 4. Back then, things were different and VGC was not as accessible as it is today, as obtaining legitimate competitive Pokemon in-game was incredibly difficult. These days, it's not that difficult, but back then it was a Herculean task. So Smogon's competitive singles formats were more popular. Since the games are not balanced around 6v6 singles competitive, a lot of balance issues arise and Pokemon end up being broken in this format when they aren't broken in the doubles format. So rules are put in place to make 6v6 singles as balanced as it can be. Smogon also has a usage-based tiering system where Pokemon are categorized into different tiers based on how often they're used. This means there are multiple competitive formats you can play instead of just one, like in VGC. The most popular is OU, or Overused, where very powerful Pokemon like Landorus Therian and King Gambit are allowed, but the powerful legendaries and other Pokemon that are a bit too overwhelming, like Miraidon or Annihilape, who happens to be really broken in singles, are banned. Usually the way that Pokemon get banned from Gen 9 OU is through voting. The way it's been done in Gen 9 is that the community is surveyed to figure out what Pokemon they think are the most problematic at the moment. And if a certain Pokemon gets an overwhelming amount of survey responses, there's a vote performed on it, and to qualify for the vote, you need to achieve a certain amount of wins on the Pokemon ladder. Not just anyone can vote, you have to actually be pretty good at the game to be able to vote. For a Pokemon to get banned, they need to reach a 60% ban vote, and some people are confused about this. Why 60% and not, 50%? I think it makes sense. If you're gonna ban a Pokemon, that's a big decision, so you want an overwhelming majority of people to agree that this Pokemon is broken. I don't think it would feel fair if a Pokemon had 51% vote to ban and got banned, because that's really close and it seems like a divisive thing. In the case of this Kyurem ban, the vote was as close as it gets. The vote to ban was 61%, but then this scandal was uncovered and it turned out that a lot of these votes were not legitimate. How can these votes not be legitimate though if the players all achieved the requisite requirements to be able to vote? All of their accounts are verified by Smogon moderators to check if they did actually achieve this. Well, the way this was done is that a single user repeatedly achieved voting requirements on multiple alt accounts. Props to them, kind of. Even though this is one person rigging the vote, it does take some skill to be able to keep making alts and get voting requirements on all of them. This guy did this with 11 accounts. Now, it's obvious why this is against the rules. One person can't have 11 votes, but the way that they circumvented this was by distributing each of these alts to other Smogon users so they could vote on this user's behalf. I'm not sure exactly how they found him out, probably through some sort of IP checking, because it would raise an alarm bell if a bunch of different accounts had alts that were all on the same IP. And props to the Smogon staff for discovering this, because otherwise this could have kept going. This one user could have just kept rigging the votes to get the result they want every time. But then this raises the question of how secure is this voting system in the first place? How do you actually enforce these requirements? If this user was discovered through IP checking, what if they just do ghosting instead? They could just hop in a Discord call with someone else, tell them every single move to make, so it's basically like they're playing, but then it can't be traced back to them. And this player could just help a bunch of people get voting requirements by telling them every move to make, and rig the vote that way. It might look suspicious if a bunch of users who have never done anything noteworthy before all start getting voting requirements, which takes some skill, but then it's a little bit difficult to prove that anything bad is happening if there's no evidence to link them back to the original cheater. This is also a problem in tournaments as well. Because everything's done online in the Smogon community, it's actually pretty easy to cheat, unfortunately. It's a problem I don't like talking about. I don't want to encourage it, but it's just a reality a little bit. I talked about this with McMagan on my podcast, The Fridge, actually. It's been a problem for quite a while, the issue of ghosting, and it is an unfortunate issue. It would be nice if people could just be normal and not cheat, but that's a naive thing to believe, because if there's ever glory or pride or even sometimes money on the line, or in this case, the result of a ban that affects the metagame that you play, there's going to be incentives to cheat, unfortunately. I mean, this is a niche competitive community, a offshoot of competitive Pokemon run by volunteers, so cheating in this is kind of loser behavior in my opinion. Hopefully, most people just play this game for fun, which it should be. It should be a hobby, a fun video game. And it sucks. I think that the community involvement of Smogon is one of the coolest things about it. A lot of people cry about the fact that Smogon bans Pokemon, but it's the community deciding everything. It's a unique system for a competitive game that doesn't exist anywhere else, really. What other competitive game has the community able to vote on what happens? I think that's really cool. I don't really understand the complaints about it, because you can simply just play a format with less bans if you don't like constant bans. There's Ubers right there, which has very little banned, and there's even anything goes where nothing is banned at all. If you think that bans are a bad thing, just play the format where nothing is banned, or play VGC if you prefer that. But some people do enjoy being involved in the process of how the format is shaped. And it's fun to be involved, I think. And it's unfortunate this is being taken away by cheaters in this instance. I hope that this does not become an ongoing problem. And in the post, Finchinator did also say that this user was doing the same thing on previous ban votes, but they figured out that none of those outcomes would have affected the result. So they did make a bunch of accounts to vote in the way they wanted, but it wouldn't have impacted the result anyway. They went back and figured that out. So that's lucky, I guess. So you don't have to reverse old bans that happened or didn't happen. Maybe the guy didn't make enough accounts back then, but this is crazy. I don't want this to happen anymore. I hate people who ghost. It's extraordinarily lame behavior. There's no honor. Okay, we're playing this niche competitive game. Just play honorably. Just be who you say you are. You're gonna get someone on a Discord call to tell you your moves and take their glory? It's just, I can't imagine doing it. I can't imagine looking myself in the mirror afterwards. It's ridiculous. How could you? Anyway, whatever. This happened. It's been reversed. Props to the staff for finding it out. Kyurem is back in the format. Like I said in the previous video, I was alright with the Kyurem ban, but I was also pretty 50-50 on it, as was most of the community, so I'm not too fussed about it, really. And I think it's good that the true result has been unearthed, because this is supposed to be democratic. This wasn't technically ghosting, but it's a similar thing of somebody falsifying a result. In essence, it's the same thing, because Smogon users were claiming to have achieved suspect requirements based on somebody else's performance. So that's basically the same thing in my eyes. Thank you for watching, folks, and I'll catch you later.